Welcome to Catholic Answers Live, the program where you participate with your questions about apologetics and evangelization, including the most important theological, spiritual, moral, and social issues facing the world today. Call now with your question for today's guest. Toll free 1-888-31-TRUTH. That's 888-318-7884. Now, from San Diego, Catholic Answers Live.
Hello and welcome to our Big Monday show. I know I maybe come across as a braggart because of how great I think our Monday shows are, but this show will not disappoint. A bit later, Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco will be here. I'm going to ask him about the big walk for life up there, but we're going to spend most of the hour talking about liturgy and beauty and liturgical music and beautiful liturgical music, and it's going to be a great hour with the Archbishop. This hour, we tackle perhaps the deepest divide of our age, the divide over whether God still matters. Our guest this hour, Carlo Broussard, staff apologist and speaker extraordinaire here at Catholic Answers. Hi, Carlo. How are you?
Hey, Cy. I'm doing great, brother.
And you got a book coming out sometime this spring.
Yes, sir. I'm excited to say my first book that'll be coming out, a published book, if you don't count the booklet, the 20 Answers booklet on miracles, but this will be my first full-length book that will be published by Catholic Answers Press here at Catholic Answers. And sometime this spring, we don't know exactly when, but we're working on getting the manuscript all prettied up and ready to go.
Very
and
good.
The title's Prepare the Way. Subtitle, How to Overcome Obstacles to God, the Gospel, and the Church. And the motif of the book it comes from, the prophet Isaiah, prepare the way of the Lord, and in particular the ministry of John the Baptist, sort of making low those hills and mountains and filling in the valleys as our Lord approaches bearing the gifts of truth and life. So for many folks out there, particularly unbelievers, there are many intellectual obstacles and even emotional obstacles that stand in the way of them embracing the truth and the life that Jesus has to offer them. So for example, when it comes to truth, how can I believe in truth when there are so many people who believe so many different things? Or when it comes to God, how can I believe in God when there's so much evil in the world? Or how can I believe in Jesus when I can't even really know that the New Testament documents are reliable? Or how can I be a Christian when Christians believe in the Old Testament where God did some things that seem pretty bad and stuff, type of thing. And then when it comes to the church, various obstacles that stand in the way of embracing Catholicism. How can the church be opposed to same-sex sexual activity and other obstacles as well? So in the book, I teach you, the reader, and instruct you on various strategies and how to remove these intellectual and emotional obstacles in order to prepare the way as our Lord comes approaching the unbeliever or the believer who's struggling with some of these obstacles, in order for that person to embrace that truth and that life that Jesus has to offer. So it's kind of like a coaching manual for those out there who are interested in evangelizing, and also too for anybody who is struggling with the obstacles or willing and have an open mind to look at the ways in which we would think through these obstacles, right? And hopefully it'll be helpful for folks out there.
I'm sure it will.
I'm looking forward to it and see how it does. I had a lot of fun writing it and researching for it, but we'll see.
Prepare the Way, How to Overcome Obstacles to God, the Gospel, and the Church. And that'll be coming out sometime this spring. We don't know the exact date, but today we focus kind of on God. Why God still matters is our topic. 888-318-7884 is the number if you'd like to talk with Carlo about why God still matters. 888-318-7884. Perhaps you think that God doesn't matter because there's no longer reason to believe in God, or if you're not sure about God, what's God's place in the modern world? Maybe you're you have someone in your life who no longer believes that God matters, and you'd like to know how to address that. 888-318-7884, the number. You have an article out, it's coming up in the next magazine, called Why Science Can't Eliminate God.
Yeah, something like that. The title's still working on it, Why Science Can't Do Away with God, but the same idea.
Yeah.
And this is one of the major reasons, Si, that many atheists will propose of why God no longer matters.
Yeah.
So even somebody might even go so far as to say, well, God may exist, but we don't really need to appeal to him in order to explain the universe because science can get the job done. And the underlying assumption being that science is sufficient, natural science that is, science is sufficient to explain everything, about the universe, to where we don't need to posit some sort of transcendent creator in order to explain why things exist here and now. And so in the article, I give reasons why this claim is false. And fundamentally, the basic gist of the argument is that natural science presupposes certain things about the material universe that it cannot possibly, because it presupposes those things, it cannot possibly explain those things.
Yeah.
So, for example, science presupposes the reality of change itself. Okay, so any sort of scientific experiment that you're going to perform, it presupposes change. First of all, you're going to observe something, some sort of phenomenon, and then you're going to offer a hypothesis and test the hypothesis, and then you're going to change with regard to your knowledge about what is real within the universe, first of all. And then secondly, the scientific experiment itself is going to imply change. If I have, as I point out in the article, if I'm testing, the degree of heat needed to melt natural rubber and turn it into a lump of goo, right? Well, whenever that scientific experiment takes place, change is going to occur because the rubber is going to go from not being a lump of goo to being a lump of goo.
Yeah.
Okay, now here's what's interesting, Si, is change, which in philosophy, in the philosophical jargon, we would say is the actualization of a potency, where something has a potential for some actual state of being, and then it actually has that state of being.
Right.
Potentially a lump of goo to being a lump of goo, right? For the natural rubber. And that is the very starting, at least one of the many starting points for reasoning to God's existence. So if science presupposes change, and change is the very starting point for the argument for God's existence, then science cannot possibly explain away the need for God.
Yeah, because
And then when you...
its own assumptions are part of the explanation.
That's right.
Yeah.
The assumption of science, that which is needed for science to even get off the ground, is the very starting point for natural theology, which is the study of God according to the natural light of human reason. And then upon further philosophical analysis, when you break down change and what change itself involves, we uncover certain features about the material universe in what we call philosophy of nature, which is a branch of philosophy that studies material beings and what material beings, the principles of material beings. We say like the substantial form and the matter and efficient causes and find all of this stuff. Well, the point being, the bottom line, Si, is that when you unpack what change involves, there are certain features about the material universe that are also the very starting points for reasoning to God's existence. And we see this embodied in St. Thomas Aquinas' 5 ways in the Summa Theologia, and even in his work on being and essence, where he talks about, contingent things, or things that depend on other things for their existence. They don't have existence by nature, so they need to be caused to exist by something else. Well, that contingent nature, right? The fact that something's dependent upon something else for its existence, science presupposes those kinds of things because you need something existing in order to observe it, right? And to empirically verify it, etc. Well, that's the very starting point. The very existence of something is the very starting point for reasoning to God's existence. So science could not possibly, in principle, explain these presuppositions or fundamental assumptions.
Yeah.
And if these assumptions are the starting points for reasoning to God's existence, science cannot, in principle, pontificate, right? Or speak with regard to the existence of God, much less explain God away.
Right.
So these are some of the things that I unpack in the forthcoming article for our March and April Catholic Answers Magazine edition.
888-318-7884 is the number, 888-318-7884. Carlo Broussard, our guest this hour. We're talking about why God still matters. Do you have any interest, or does it come up in your philosophizing and theologizing, this question, why is there something rather than nothing? Is that a big part of what you do?
Amen. That's the fundamental question,
And that's
right?
not a question that science can answer, is that?
That is not a question that science can answer, precisely because that something
Already exists
is
once-
presupposed
Yeah.
by science. Because in order to do natural science, you need something existing in order to observe. When we ask the question why that something exists, that's a philosophical question that is outside the boundaries of
Right.
natural empirical science or the discipline of empirical science. And so it can only be answered with the tool of philosophy.
Right.
And when you work out the answer to that question, I would argue, you ultimately come to some, as St. Thomas Aquinas would say, uncaused cause, or to use the, scholastic jargon, the unactualized actualizer, you might say, or, in other words, you come to God. And God is ultimately the answer for why something exists rather than not existing.
I have to say, I've read some of the new atheists or scientific atheists' answers to that, and they all seem to, maybe I'm being judgmental, but they seem somewhat anti-intellectual. They seem to be along the lines of, well, there is something, so don't worry about it. The point is that it just is. Existence just is.
Yeah, it is interesting that you see among many very sophisticated atheistic scientists that when it comes to the universe itself, laws upon laws, layers of nature upon layers of laws of nature, fundamentally some will say, well, it's just a brute fact. Even
that's right.
Even the famous Bertrand Russell, a famous 20th century atheistic philosopher, stated in a very famous public debate with Father Copleston that the universe just is, and we don't necessarily have to ask why the universe.
But we do ask why.
That's right. It's the fundamental drive of human nature to know and to ask the question why. Now, on the face value, we initially react to that and say that's absurd, but it does demand a response, and we can give reasons why something just can't be a brute fact. Because fundamentally, if you make that claim, you undermine what is called the principle of sufficient reason. You're saying something exists,
but I have no reason for it.
But have no reason for its existence.
Yeah.
And we can attack that claim. We can go at that claim and show how that claim it reduces to logical absurdity. Because it's denying one of the fundamental principles of human reason. Because if you say something can exist without a reason for its existence, ultimately, the bottom line is you're going to have to end up denying rationality itself.
Yeah, right.
That's right. Because if something can exist without a reason for its existence, well, then my claims could possibly exist without any sort of logical connection to any premise that would substantiate its truth value.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, why are we even talking? You say, why are we even debating about it?
Why God Still Matters is our topic this hour. 888-31-TRUTH, our number. Lots of people on the line. We'll get to those calls right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Don't you just love listening to Carlo Broussard? Did you know you can book Carlo or any of our other great speakers to speak at your parish or special event? Contact one of our seminar coordinators through the Speakers Bureau section on Catholic.com today to find out more information.
January is Pro-Life Month, and to get as many people as we can involved in the pro-life cause, we're making Trent Horn's book, Persuasive Pro-Life, and his DVD, Making the Case for Life, available for just $5 each. That's a savings of over 70%. Both the book and the DVD were made specifically with you in mind, to help you engage in sustained and meaningful dialogue and to give you the tools you need to change people's hearts and minds so that together we might build up a pro-life culture, one person, one conversation at a time. To get your copies of the book, Persuasive Pro-Life, or the DVD, Making the Case for Life, for just $5 each, just call 1-888-291-8000 or visit the shop at Catholic.com.
Pope Francis said, "The key that opens the door to faith is prayer." Join St. Paul Street Evangelization by running a prayer station in the public square. You don't need to be a professional apologist or theologian. Just listen to the needs of the people you encounter. Offer encouragement, take prayer requests, and pray with people. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Atheists have a new tactic when it comes to talking about the existence of God. Your arguments in favor of God don't even deserve a reply, they say. Because not only does God not exist, he doesn't even matter. In his new DVD, Why God Still Matters, apologist Carlo Broussard doesn't let them off so easy. He takes apart the premises of those who say God's irrelevant and teaches you what you need to demonstrate why God is just as important. In fact, in today's world, more important than ever. Don't let atheists shut down the argument before it begins. Get your copy of Why God Still Matters by calling 1-888-291-8000, logging on to Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Carlo Broussard, our guest this hour. We're discussing why God still matters. If you have a view on that, maybe that God doesn't matter, or maybe that you need some help explaining it to someone else why God still matters, give us a call, 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Lots of calls, so if you don't mind, Carlo, let's take a few of them.
All right, let's give it a shot.
All right, Jackie in Charleston, South Carolina, listening on 7:30 a.m. You are up first with Carlo Broussard.
Hello. First of all, I'd like to say that I am a convert to Catholicism.
Okay, welcome home.
Thank you. I have done a lot of, I would say, I'm very analytical. So as much as I'm faithful, I have done a lot of study. And, and also I would say every Catholic, cradle Catholic, should go through RCIA, again, because it teaches them so much about probably things they don't even know. But while I was listening to this, and by the way, I'm late to a meeting called alpha.org. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but it's in the Catholic Church has their own, but I'm going to an Anglican church where it's people just sharing their faith and sharing it with people that have come new into Christianity, whatever. So I can't wait to tell them my excuse is that I was on Catholic radio.
That's a good conversation starter, isn't it?
That is your dog ate your homework.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, I wanted to say you guys answered a lot of my questions in your discussion since I called about, what you guys have researched or what, Broussard, should I call you Father Broussard, or you just...
No, I'm not a father. You can just say Carlo.
Well, he is a father of little
I'm,
children.
That's right. I'm not a priest.
Okay, well, that's all right.
Okay, so how can I help you?
But okay, what I wanted to say was that, first of all, need we ask why God is still important, or what was the main question?
Why God
is
still
God
matters.
so important in the world?
Yeah, why God
why
still
does it
matters.
Just do we need any more evidence than just to look at our world? That's why it still matters. And what I try to explain to so many people who are either atheists and or have been, were going to church when they were younger and have fallen away from the church, and or a lot of the kids growing up, new millennials, that don't attend church because their parents weren't as good about taking them to church, and they think they know everything. My point with them is that faith is hard to grasp, yet what you all just made very obvious in supporting evidence is that you cannot come up with why scientists are right if there's no premise for the world that they're right about. And that's not the right way to phrase it. But also, there has got to be something bigger than us, period.
Well, Carlo, I'd like to get a response to that.
Yeah, well, one thing, Jackie, you were making in your comments was, isn't it enough evidence that there is the world around us? And so the implication being that we look at the world, we look at the cosmos, and then we're able to reason to the existence of a creator. Now, that statement is true, Jackie. There's various different aspects of that. So, for example, some philosophers and even theistic scientists will say we can look at the cosmos and look at the complexity of the universe and then reason to the need of a super calculating intellect in order to sufficiently and reasonably explain that complexity of the universe. So that's one way in which we can go about doing what you do, doing what you said to do, look at the universe and then reason to God. And now another way that we could go about doing it, which is more classically, which we find in the writings of St. Thomas Aquinas, which have their origins in even the writings of the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, is that is looking at mundane things of the universe, so the existence of change itself. When I move my mouse to move the mouse on the computer, our very existence itself, the fact that something is, that I exist rather than not exist, the fact that the tree exists out there rather than not exist, these mundane features of the universe can be starting points for reasoning to the existence of God. So your claim is true that yes, the evidence for God is in the cosmos. By looking at the cosmos, starting with these fundamental features that we experience, and then philosophically reason to God's existence as the ultimate ground or ultimate explanation of these fundamental features. So yes, you're right on the money, Jackie, in saying that we can look to the cosmos and then reason back to God's existence, and that's one way by which we can do that.
Jackie, lots and lots of calls, so I'm going to keep moving. Thank you very, very much for that call. Let's go to Ryan in St. Joseph, Missouri, listening on 106.7 FM. Ryan, you are on with Carlo Broussard.
Hey, guys. I'm 18. I'm still in high school, and wow, it is hard to compose a sentence when you know a lot of people are listening.
It's okay, Ryan. We're in the same boat, brother. I'm just as nervous as you, my friend.
Doubtful, but what I was going to say was I'm questioning why God still matters because I'm having a crisis of faith. I went through Lyme disease in my childhood, and it nearly ended me. I asked God for help. He didn't, and instead I turned to my parents and doctors, and they helped me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around, if God does love me and He is responsible for everything, then why would He let that happen to me?
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Ryan, thank you.
Yeah, Ryan, this is the fundamental problem that we all have to face, believer and unbeliever alike, and that is the problem of evil, of God's allowance and permission of sin in the world, but also suffering in the world. In this case, suffering for you, my friend. Now, there's different ways that we can go about trying to work through this question, Ryan. You know, if the question is the existence of this suffering or God's permission of this suffering, when He has the power to stop it, incompatible with His divine goodness, well then the answer to that question would be no, it's not incompatible, because I can think of instances even in my own experience, and maybe even in your own experience, Ryan, where I permit certain things to happen. Like, for example, when my kids get a scrape on the knee or they get a cut and my wife is applying peroxide to clean out the wound, and my kid is screaming and hollering because it burns, and my wife, in a sense, is inflicting pain upon my child. Now, I have the power to stop my wife from inflicting that pain, but I permit it. Why? Now, here's the question. Does my permission of that suffering, even though I have the power to stop it, count against my goodness as a father? And the answer is no, Ryan. Why? Because I am aware of the greater good that can be brought about from the permission of this suffering. Similarly, the fact that God permits suffering in our lives in no way is incompatible with His goodness, because there is no good that He cannot, there is no greater good that He cannot bring about from His permission of suffering. As St. Thomas Aquinas, following St. Augustine from the 4th century, would say, God permits suffering and evil in this life only insofar as He will bring about a greater good. So just because one permits suffering, even though having the power to stop it, that doesn't follow from that permission of suffering counts against one's goodness. Now, somebody might say, Ryan, well, I can't see any good that would come from this permission of suffering. Well, that's something that we would expect given our limitations of our cognitive faculties, right, and our limited knowledge, and we're confined in space and time. God's infinite in knowledge. And just because we don't know of a greater good, it doesn't follow that there is no greater good. So once again, if the question is, does God's permission of suffering count against his goodness, is incompatible with his goodness, the answer would be no. So that's sort of the intellectual approach to it, Ryan. Now, in the Christian faith, if we look, Ryan, at your situation through the lens of Christianity, because, I hear the song there, Ryan, so if you can hang on, I'll get back to you on the other side of the break. Right, Si?
Yep. Hang on, Ryan. We'll be right back to address your important question, or continue addressing your important question. Why does God matter? That's our question this hour. Carlo Broussard is here to provide answers. 888-318-7884 is the number. We'll be right back with more after this.
Catholic Answers Live.
EWTN, helping people grow in their love and understanding of God.
Others that I would say definitely made an impact now is EWTN, and I go and walk at the park every day at lunch listening to you guys and being able to learn a lot more about the faith, learn a lot of other perspectives that I may have not have thought about. So I just want to thank y'all for being a big influence.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Do you subscribe to Catholic Answers Magazine? We hope, but if not, right now we've got a deal that you're going to love. We've reduced the price and thrown in a free digital subscription when you subscribe. That's right, subscriptions to Catholic Answers Magazine just got cheaper, $10 less on one-year subscriptions and $20 less on two-year subscriptions. And right now, when you purchase a subscription, you get a subscription to the digital edition added to your order for free. With a deal like that, it's the perfect gift for friends, family members, seminarians, your priest, even yourself. When you get right down to it, what other gift has the potential to touch hearts and reap eternal rewards? Log on today to CatholicAnswersMagazine.com and sign up yourself, your friends, and your family for a magazine that is bound to make a difference in their lives and the lives of those they meet. Share the faith. Defend the faith. Catholic Answers Magazine from Catholic Answers, the most trusted name in Catholic apologetics.
Tim Staples, Trent Horn, Cy Kellett, Chris Check, Carlo Broussard. Our on-fire lineup of speakers will inform and inspire your audience to grow in their Catholic faith. For more information on booking a Catholic Answers speaker for your event, visit CatholicAnswersSpeakers.com today.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Carlo Broussard, apologist, speaker, and now author of a brand new, just about to come out book is our guest this hour. The book will be Prepare the Way, How to Overcome Obstacles to God, the Gospel, and the Church. Our topic this hour, why God still matters. And we're speaking with Ryan in St. Joseph, Missouri, who contracted Lyme disease as a child and suffered a great deal through that, and wonders, even though he cried out to God for help,
right,
it didn't seem that God helped him. And so how does God matter in Ryan's life? You were tackling that.
Ryan, you still there, brother?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, now, before the break, what I was providing you was sort of a starting point in order to ground your mind, because if we can know, at least intellectually, at least that God's permission of suffering is not incompatible with his goodness, because knowing that he's infinite in power, he can bring about a greater good that would outweigh the suffering that he permits. That's one approach. We ground ourselves on that intellectual truth. But Ryan, it can only take us so far. You see, because God actually revealed himself through his son, Jesus Christ. Now, granted, that would take some legwork in order to establish that claim. But consider this, Ryan, that in Christianity, we believe that Jesus revealed to us that God didn't leave us to our own in the midst of our suffering, that he actually provides a means by which we can actually transform our very sufferings into a tool that we can use for our own benefit, namely to achieve final salvation in our lives, to grow in holiness, but also to contribute to the salvation of others. And Christianity reveals to us also, Ryan, that in the afterlife in heaven, which is a definitive state of supreme satisfaction and happiness, St. Paul teaches that the glory of heaven, there is no suffering in this life that pales in comparison to the glory in heaven that will be revealed in us to outweigh all of the suffering that God permits in this life. So my suggestion to you, Ryan, is that God, when you called out for God for help, God sometimes doesn't necessarily act directly in our lives, but God wills to use other people, Ryan. He will to use your mother and your father to whom you turn to for help. He will to use the doctors to whom you turn to for help. He's willing to use myself and Cy, to whom you're turning to answer this very question about his permission of suffering, because that's the way God set it up. He wants to use human instruments to be his hands and his feet to minister to others and to communicate his blessings. And Ryan, I would share with you that God ultimately does that through Christianity, through his son, Jesus Christ, and through the church that Jesus established, through which we get the graces that we need, Ryan, in order to bear these sufferings and these trials in our lives, united with Jesus Christ, which can actually benefit our own souls, the souls of others, and actually contribute, Ryan, to our final salvation of heaven, where all will be redeemed. And that, Ryan, can be a message of hope in the midst of the suffering. Now, granted, we don't know exactly why God allowed that particular suffering in your life and what that particular good is exactly, but we do know, Ryan, philosophically and in light of Christian revelation, that God will ultimately bring about a greater good, that greater good being eternal life with him in heaven, which will outweigh and offset whatever suffering you experience and that I experience in this life.
How does that all strike you there, Ryan?
Honestly, let me start with this. It took me a lot of courage to call and talk to you about
We
this.
appreciate that.
To talk to you about this, I had to remember some of my older and much less pleasant memories.
Right.
But
go ahead, Ryan.
Hold on. The reason I called was, and you guys have helped me a great deal, thank you. I just wanted it to end. I wanted it to stop, and It didn't seem like God did anything. And that's why I had to turn to my mother, my father, and those doctors. And that's when I started questioning if God even cared or mattered, if he wasn't going to do anything to help.
Right. Well, I'll just leave you with this, Ryan, that God does love you. He does care about you. And he did care for you, number one, through the means, through the activity, through the help of your mother and your father and the doctors to whom you turn to. Because, Ryan, the gifts that your mother and your father and the doctor have to minister to you in your time of need are gifts from Almighty God, first and foremost. And then secondly, Ryan, there are mysterious ways in which God works in our lives in the midst of our suffering that we simply cannot see the effects of those activities of God working in the soul right now. As time goes on, and it might not even be till the end of time when you stand before Christ, when you see finally how God used the present sufferings he allowed and ordered them ultimately to your greater good. And we have good reason, Ryan, to hope in the promise of Jesus Christ that he will set all things right.
Ryan, hang on. I'd like to send you a book. Our friends on Facebook are recommending all kinds of books for you, including Avoiding Bitterness and Suffering, a fine book by Rhonda Shervin, and what was the other one? Making Sense Out of Suffering, Peter Crave's book.
Right.
But I want to send you The Problem of Evil by our own Jimmy Akin. If you'll hang on, Aline will get your number and we'll send you that book. Again, Ryan, thanks very much for that call. Call anytime. 888-318-7884 is our number. Why God Still Matters is our topic. Our guest is Carlo Broussard, and we go now to Alex in San Antonio, Texas, listening on EWTN Radio. Alex, your question for Carlo Broussard.
Hi, how's it going?
All right, brother.
So my question is, what if someone doesn't care about the intellectual reasons that God matters, and they have emotional barriers to that?
Right.
What can you do to help someone that's in that situation?
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, it depends on the context and the situation and the type of relationship that you have with the individual, Alex. I mean, for example, if you have a friendship with this individual, and initially you discern that they're sort of closed off to any sort of rational dialogue about God's existence, etc., well, then my advice would be simply to be friends with them and to engage in that relationship with the individual, to let that person see the light of Christ in your own life, the fact that you're living a joy-filled life, the fact that you're following the dictates of reason, that you personally are being an intelligent human being. You're not just, acting based upon a blind impulse of the mind, that your faith is rational, it's reasonable, etc. So if you have the relationship, you can start with just keeping that contact, keeping that physical relationship with them, being in their presence to let them see your life testimony, and looking out for the opportunities in order to engage in rational dialogue. That is, two ways you can do that. Number one, you could just straight up ask them a question in natural conversation when you're at the coffee shop or at the pub or wherever you're at, right? Or you can wait for them to make some sort of claim. And whenever that person makes a claim relative to God, Jesus, religion, the church, whatever it may be, well, then you can follow up with the question of why. Because remember, Alex, every claim is in some form or manner going to be based upon some reason, right? I mean, there has to be some reason that led the person to make the claim that they're making. So whenever the person makes the claim, you simply ask why, and then in natural conversation, if they're willing, they may very well give you the reason that led them to that claim, because everybody's interested in telling their story, right? I mean, everybody's interested in that. So you ask the question why, and then Alex, once they give the reason, well then you're able to begin talking about that reason, asking follow-up questions about the premises, right, that they're basing their conclusions on. And whenever you can see errors or sort of intellectual consistencies within those premises, you can charitably point those out and say, well, have you ever considered this? Or have you ever considered that? What do you think about this? Those are the type of questions perhaps that you can ask. Now, that's one scenario where you have this friendship and relationship. Now, Alex, there are times when we face an individual, they make an objection against God based upon emotion rather than reason, and they're not interested in having any sort of rational dialogue. Well, then fundamentally, Alex, we have to discern that nothing we say is going to help. So we simply have to walk away or move to another subject and not cast our pearls before the swine. Sometimes it's just impossible to go forward if an individual is not willing to engage in a rational discourse of going back and forth. Because whenever there's purely emotions involved, all you can do is be calm, kind, loving, and charitable. And there's pretty much no room for rational discourse. So it's not a cookie-cut mode answer. Alex, you sort of have to discern each individual circumstance and try to feel the waters, so to speak, and figure out where you can swim and where you can't. Is that helpful for you, Alex?
Yeah, that was really helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, that was
Well,
good. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. We have to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Carlo Broussard and Why God Still Matters on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
Catholic Answers. Our success depends on you.
Catholic Answers Live is brought to you in part by CatholicSingles.com, the website for Catholics who want to meet others who share their Catholic values for faith, fellowship, and love. You can learn more at CatholicSingles.com. Catholic Answers Live thanks CatholicSingles.com for their generous support.
Hi, this is Trent Horn, and I'm here with a couple of very special offers for all of you interested in standing up for the rights of the unborn. January is Pro-Life Month, and to get as many people as we can involved in the pro-life cause, we're making my book, Persuasive Pro-Life, and my DVD, Making the Case for Life, available for just $5 each. That's a saving of over 70%. I wrote this book and I made this DVD specifically with you in mind, to help you engage in sustained and meaningful dialogue and give you the tools you need to change people's hearts and minds, so that together we might build up a pro-life culture, one person, one conversation at a time. To get your copies of my book, Persuasive Pro-Life, or my DVD, Making the Case for Life, for just $5, call 1-888-291-8000 or visit the shop at Catholic.com.
Do you subscribe to Catholic Answers Magazine? We hope, but if not, right now we've got a deal that you're going to love. We've reduced the price and thrown in a free digital subscription when you subscribe. That's right, subscriptions to Catholic Answers Magazine just got cheaper, $10 less on one-year subscriptions and $20 less on two-year subscriptions. And right now, when you purchase a subscription, you get a subscription to the digital edition added to your order for free. With a deal like that, it's the perfect gift for friends, family members, seminarians, your priest, even yourself. When you get right down to it, what other gift has the potential to touch hearts and reap eternal rewards? Log on today to CatholicAnswersMagazine.com and sign up yourself, your friends, and your family for a magazine that is bound to make a difference in their lives and the lives of those they meet. Share the faith. Defend the faith. Catholic Answers Magazine from Catholic Answers, the most trusted name in Catholic apologetics.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. It is our big Monday show, and it's almost the end of January, so it's about to go away, that deal that they have on Trent's book, Persuasive Pro-Life, How to Talk About Our Culture's Toughest Issues, and his DVD, Making the Case for Life. Each of those is on sale for only $5 at shop.catholic.com because it's Sanctity of Life Month. So if you'd like to get one of Trent Horn's two fine pro-life materials, Persuasive Pro-Life, How to Talk About Our Culture's Toughest Issue, that's the book, and the DVD, Making the Case for Life, each just $5 for a few more days over at shop.catholic.com. Our topic this hour, Why God Still Matters. And we go now to David in Duluth, Minnesota. David, you are on with Carlo Broussard.
Hello, sir. Should I go ahead and ask my question?
Yes, sure, David. Yeah. Thanks for giving us a call, by the way.
Yeah. Well, earlier you said that that it was irrational for someone to say that the universe exists without God, and I don't believe in God. Okay. And the reason, part of the reason is that I see that the universe exists, but I don't feel like there's enough evidence to say that, there's some kind of invisible giant floating around that got bored and decided to make people in a garden.
Okay.
And then, there's this guy that just called with the Lyme disease. I feel like that's one of many lines of evidence against God, where here's a kid who, as a child, he could have not only suffered but died. Right. What would he have learned from that experience? Why does this child deserve that? And what about all the fossil record in evolution and all the Bible contradictions and all the other lines of evidence against God? I think it's irrational to assert without any evidence that your particular God was, got lonely or something and decided to make Adam and Eve a talking snake.
All right, David. Well, you threw out a lot there, brother, and I don't know if we're going to be able to touch on every single thing you proposed there, but there are a couple of things that I would point out initially. Number one, we would deny that God is a big invisible giant up there in the sky, because he's not up there in the sky, and he's not merely unseen. He's immaterial, which means he's outside of space. And the classical understanding of God is that he's eternal or atemporal, which means he's outside of time completely. And then secondly, God didn't get lonely. It's not that God was just twiddling his thumbs up there in the sky and then said, well, okay, I'm going to create Adam and Eve now. So those are two assumptions that we as atheists, at least of the classical sort, would deny. So I would reject that God too. I would reject the idea that God is some invisible giant up in the sky, such as, like Thor or some sort of demigod or whatever. I would reject that too. That's not the God we believe in. I would also reject that God was just twiddling his thumbs and got bored, which would assume or imply some sort of imperfection, and then happened to create Adam and Eve in order to perfect himself and make himself happy. I reject that God too. So your question or objection, however you want to look at it, is being proposed based on an assumption about God that we would reject as well. Because God, being the infinite being outside of all time and space, is eternal, and he is perfect within himself, and no thing outside of himself can perfect him. This is why, Sai, we say that God did not create necessarily. The effects that come into being within the temporal modes of existence, are by virtue of his infinite intellect and will, but he wills them as such because he doesn't will them necessarily. The effect doesn't necessarily follow from the cause because God only necessarily wills himself, and all creatures he creates by freedom, by virtue of his free will. So effects or creations do not follow necessarily from God's essence, okay? So this is how we can explain the fact that you have Adam and Eve beginning, but an eternal God who from all eternity wills that Adam and Eve would come into existence at a particular time. But Adam and Eve's existence doesn't perfect God. God didn't get bored and thus have to create Adam and Eve in order to perfect himself, because he's infinitely perfect in himself. And one last line of reasoning, David, then I'll let you respond, is that you made the claim that there are no lines of evidence, no reason to think that God exists. But David, I would have to ask you, have you ever seriously considered the philosophical arguments for God's existence? For example, the argument from motion or change, the argument from efficient causality, the argument from contingent beings in the world, the argument from final causality, arguments such as St. Thomas Aquinas and other thinkers. Have you ever considered those sort of arguments? I'm not talking about like fine-tuning arguments or arguing intelligent design from complexity. I'm talking about arguments that start with features of the material world and then philosophically reason back to God's existence. Have you ever seriously considered those arguments?
So when you say motion, are you talking about the idea that everything has a cause and you can keep going back and back and back?
Well, not quite. I'm not saying that everything has a cause. What I am saying is just starting with motion, change, and cause itself, and then saying whatever is caused must be caused by another, in which case, if God didn't exist, there would be an infinite series of caused causes. But there cannot be an infinite series of caused causes. Therefore, not everything is cause. There must be at least one uncaused cause. This is St. Thomas Aquinas' second way from efficient causality. His first way would be an Aristotelian form of whatever is moved by another, and then reasoning that there cannot be an infinite series of moved movers, and there would have to be a first mover that is not moved by another. That's the type of argument I'm referring to.
So there's philosophy and then there's science. So when science tries to trace back the cause the causes, back. It gets stuck because it comes to a point where there isn't even time. And science doesn't know the answer. And so what scientists say at that point is, we don't know. But what Christians say is, well, we know. There must be a guy. And let's say that he didn't create people out of loneliness. You can have whatever reason. We can debate the reasons. But there's an assumption that you're making that there's this guy, and you can define him in this way or that way, which, by the way, is very sophisticated, much more sophisticated than, say, the God as it was defined in the Old Testament. It seems to have evolved in its sophistication. But, the scientists say we don't know. Time is a funny thing. It's mixed up with space. We are beginning to understand it with Einstein, et cetera.
Sure.
But we just say, when we come to a question that we don't know, we just admit we don't know. We don't say we know. There's this guy, and it happens to be our particular religion.
All right.
Can I just say, though?
Yeah, go ahead,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's not what Carlo said. Carlo didn't say, I know because of my religion. He said you can reason from the facts of this world to certain understandings about God.
Correct.
Did you hear Carlo say that or no?
Yeah, he said that using philosophy,
right.
Using logic, but I was kind of trying to pull away from these medieval philosophers and talk about where science is today.
Okay, well, David, in bringing up science, that's an interesting point, because in bringing up science, you're now shifting to a different type of line of reasoning than what I was presenting, because the fact that you're talking about pushing back in time and getting to this boundary to where scientists can no longer look beyond the boundary of the finite past, that's a different type of argument. That's called the Kalam cosmological argument. Trent Horn did some great work on that in his book, Answering Atheism, pulling from the great Christian apologist, Dr. William Lane Craig, who's pulling from medieval Islamic philosophers. David, the type of argument that I'm referring to is not looking back to a series of causes in the past, but looking to a series of causes that must be operating right here and right now in order for something to exist. And it's that sort of causal series that I am claiming cannot regress infinitely, but must have a first cause that imparts the causal power to every single other cause in the series, which explains the effect right here and right now. Now, that's a claim. We would have to work that out in order to argue for and against that. But just so that we have a clear understanding of what type of argument I'm referring to, and it is this type of argument that science simply has nothing to say about, because this line of reasoning goes beyond the boundaries of philosophical inquiry. And finally, David, one thing I would leave you with this thought. Why must we get rid of philosophy? Why must we move away from philosophical thinking and restrict ourselves to only that which empirical science and its data can tell us about reality? Why would we have to do that? And whatever answer you give to that question, David, it's ultimately a philosophical answer. And so I would contend that in no way in principle can you get rid of philosophy in favor of science. I'm all in favor of science, but what I am saying is don't get rid of philosophy. And in fact, you can't get rid of philosophy.
Your response, David?
I'm not exactly advocating that we get rid of philosophy, but if you read, any ancient philosopher, ancient text, ancient religious book, you can see a lot of logic, but a lot of times the lines of logic are based on faulty presuppositions that we've now disproven with science.
Okay.
And so I think science and philosophy can sort of work hand in hand. And I think it's also funny that you're appealing to some kind of argument about causality, and yet it's not causality, and it's difficult for me to understand. And why would God expect me to try to follow this strange line of thinking to the point where if I get it wrong, I burn in hell forever. You know,
And
if I
that's a
don't-
false assumption. We're running out of time here, David, but fundamentally, if you make an intellectual error, if you're not responsible for that error, brother, God will not hold you accountable. So don't think that just because you make an intellectual error and you don't arrive at the knowledge of God's existence, you're automatically going to hell. That's a false assumption.
David, sorry we got to go, but we're here every day. Give us a call another time, 888-318-7884. Carlo Broussard, thanks for a really great hour.
Thank you, Si. It was a pleasure, my friend.
And next hour, we continue with our fantastic Monday show. Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone will be here, Archbishop of San Francisco. We're going to talk about beauty and liturgy and beautiful liturgy when we come back on Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome to Catholic Answers Live, the program where you participate with your questions about apologetics and evangelization, including the most important theological, spiritual, moral, and social issues facing the world today. Call now with your question for today's guest. Toll free 1-888-31-TRUTH. That's 888-318-7884. Now, from San Diego, Catholic Answers Live.
And welcome back to the second hour of our Super Monday show. I am Cy Kellett, your host. I'm very pleased to welcome this hour the Archbishop of San Francisco, Salvatore Cordileone. Archbishop Cordileone, thank you very much for coming in and being with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on the show.
A tough trip all the way down the full length of California.
It's a long state.
Yeah, it is. Archbishop Cordileone is a native of San Diego, right near here where we are. He was ordained a priest in 1982, earned a doctorate in canon law. Is that right? From the Pontifical Gregorian University?
Yes, that's correct.
And then before being ordained auxiliary bishop here in San Diego in 2002, he served for 7 years as an assistant at the Supreme Tribunal of the Apostolic Signatura. That's the church's highest canonical court. In 2009, Pope Benedict XVI appointed him as the fourth bishop of Oakland, and 3 years later he was appointed Archbishop of San Francisco. That's a busy life. So the highest canonical court, is there another kind of court that the church has? Or
most people are familiar with the Roman Rota, which is the last court of appeal in judicial cases. The Apostolic Signatura has a variety of competencies in the area of canon law and church cases, administrative cases, as well as certain technical appeals against the Rota. But it doesn't try a case on the merits of the case that a Rota has judged. It's the last court of appeal.
Oh, it's an appeal. Oh, I see. So
there's certain technical
if there was an
appeals
error in the
Yeah,
trial.
if someone believes the sentence is invalid, or they were denied the right of defense, or they were denied having a case reopened, they could appeal to the Signatura. But the Signatura does not actually handle the case itself.
Oh, I see. So canon law, if you studied canon law in the early 80s, they had just changed canon law right before that, hadn't they?
That's
so
why
it was new?
That's why I was sent to study canon law. The revised Code of Canon Law was promulgated after the Council in 1983. And so I was sent to study in 1985. So were many other priests. The Casa Santa Maria, which is the graduate house for American priests doing studies there, was full during those years. About 2/3 were studying canon law.
Oh, because maybe their bishop said, go over there and learn this.
Learn the new code. So when I was in my theology studies, the code was being drafted, and we were studying the old code, but also the schemas of what was going to become the new code.
Yeah. So what's the advantage of the new code? Like what, if just in the general terms, like is it just that there's more, the world has changed, we need new canon law, or was there a change in the spirit of it? Or?
Well, there was a lot of new legislation after the council, and there continues to be new legislation. There have been changes to the code since the promulgation of the code in 1983. The first code of canon law was promulgated in 1917. So maybe a better question would be, why even have a code of canon law? What does it help having a code of canon law? It helps because there were, over the centuries, different collections of laws. And there was no one reference to go to. So it was Gratian in the 12th century who really started the science of canon law with his document on the Concordance of Discordant Canons.
Oh,
it's actually the name of it. Yes. So he looked at all of these collections of laws and compared the canons. Sometimes they were disagreeing, and he integrated it. But then there was lots of legislation in the centuries following. There were different collections of code of canon law. Finally, there was what they called the Corpus Juris Canonici, the body of canon law, which was basically putting different sources of law together. Then, beginning with Pope Pius X and concluding with Pope Benedict XVI, they codified everything in 1917. Since the Second Vatican Council, the decision was that they needed to recodify after the council and all the changes in new legislation.
I see, in the light of the council, kind
of.
Yes. You have annually, I think, the second largest walk for life up there in San Francisco. Isn't that right?
Yes, we do.
Did you just have it?
We just had it last Saturday.
And how did everything go?
Fantastic. It was a great success. We always begin with the Mass at St. Mary's Cathedral, and it's the largest Mass every year. The cathedral is jam-crowded. It's a large cathedral, too. It seats 2,500 people. Not only were the pews all full with people, but it was jam crowded in the back and all along the sides. There were probably 4,000 people. I hope don't get us in trouble with the fire department, but
Just keep it between us.
there are probably about 4,000 people there. So, and then
Really?
the rally begins at the Civic Center Plaza, and then the walk. There were probably, I heard estimates, about 75,000 people, and it grows every year. This has been the largest, as every year has been. Every year's been the largest, and this year, once again,
Great.
we hit a new high.
But I don't mean this to be overly critical, but we Californians, we don't think of San Francisco as the center of pro-life activity. How does San Francisco receive the walk and the walkers?
At first, pretty violently.
Really?
Yes, the origin is rather interesting. It started by some Catholics who wanted to do something back in 2003 when the mayor at the time was issuing those same-sex marriage licenses, even though it was
I remember
against
that.
the law.
Yeah.
So it really began out of a concern to save marriage and family, and when they were trying to think what could they do to have the most impact, they kind of morphed into this Walk for Life idea, working with a local priest. And they tell me, I was at, I think, the third or fourth one. I wasn't at the first two or three. But they tell me at the first ones, of course, it was a lot smaller. I think they got 5,000 people the first time, something like that. And there were a lot of counter-protesters who were very kind of vile. Over the years, that has waned. There still are counter-protesters, but they're in a confined place, and there are no confrontations. And so there is some of that. But I love to say that, actually there are many San Franciscos. People have like this monolithic idea of San Francisco.
Right.
San Francisco has gone through a lot of different eras of history, and all of those eras, it moves into another era, but it has vestiges of the previous era. So San Francisco, of course, was a very Catholic city in the first half of the 20th century. And the church is still an integral part of the fabric of the society there, especially with our school system and our other institutional presence. So there's still a lot of a sense of the church there and its importance in the community, even though there are some who kind of don't like that. But I think overall, the local officials are very willing to collaborate with the church on things that we can work on together when there are a lot of needs in the city. So I say there are some that, don't like it, but it's not, I think initially there was a lot more sort of orchestrated resistance to it, but now it's kind of accepted as one of the annual things that goes on there. The local reporting in the local paper is very objective about it. So
Wow.
it's more, I think people probably feel less threatened by it nowadays than they did initially.
And do you think it's changing hearts and minds? Do you think it's having an effect?
Certainly the pro-life movement overall is growing,
Yes.
gaining a lot of momentum, and it's always encouraging to us all to see so many young people.
Right.
Huge numbers of young people, both at the Mass and at the walk itself. So, they carry the sign, the young people carry the sign, I am the pro-life generation. So they're beginning to understand that how evil abortion is and how violent it is, and we should not, there are always better alternatives than killing the life in the womb.
Right. Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone, the Archbishop of San Francisco, is our guest this hour. Our number, 888-318-7884. That's 888-31-TRUTH. Before we go to break, Archbishop, I wanted to ask you about the Pope, I almost said Pope, but no, it's Benedict XVI Institute. You founded the Benedict XVI Institute. Can you tell us about it?
Yes. I had this vision of founding an institute to assist parishes in the development of their liturgy and improving the quality of the celebration of the liturgy. So this is shortly after I went to San Francisco, maybe a couple of years after I was there. And Pope Benedict, we know how much he's given to the church in his catechesis in the area of liturgy and guidance in that area. So I thought it'd be appropriate to dedicate it to him. So it's the Pope Benedict XVI Institute for Sacred Music and Divine Worship. So music is kind of the heart of it, but not exclusively of music. It includes all areas of sacred beauty. The idea is to open the door of sacred beauty for God's people. we can think about the three attributes of God, of truth, goodness, and beauty, and we can look at these as three doors to evangelization, that some doors work more with some people, other doors work more with other people. A lot of people, the door they come through is the door of goodness, and I think the church is very good at and proactive at helping the poor through our Catholic Charities. St. Vincent de Paul parishes are doing many wonderful things. We're doing an awful lot to help people in all kinds of different needs, homeless, immigrants, single parents. So we're doing a lot, and so that bears witness to the love of Christ. And a lot of people, I think, encounter Christ coming through that door of goodness. There's the door of truth, which is a lot of what Catholic Answers is about, right? We have this body of teaching that we receive from the Lord that has been reflected on and developed through saints and scholars for these last 2,000 years. And some people come through the door of truth. They read, they study, and they discover the truth as it's been handed down through the Catholic Church. What we need to do is open wide the door of beauty. I think this is the door that's been probably ignored over the last couple of decades, few decades actually. And again, what a tremendous patrimony we have in the whole area of sacred beauty, of music, art, architecture, even literature. So the idea of the Benedict XVI Institute is to open the door of sacred beauty to God's people through concerts, through lectures, through teaching choirs, chant camps, and eventually to develop resources for people in the parish to have a deeper formation for the liturgy, the ministries they exercise in the liturgy.
Archbishop Cordileone from the Archdiocese of San Francisco is our guest in studio today here in San Diego. 888-318-7884 is the question. If you have questions about the Benedict XVI Institute, about beauty as a doorway to God and how we can make better use of that doorway, give us a call, 888-318-7884. We'll be right back with more after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
January is Pro-Life Month, and to get as many people as we can involved in the pro-life cause, we're making Trent Horn's book, Persuasive Pro-Life, and his DVD, Making the Case for Life, available for just $5 each. That's a savings of over 70%. Both the book and the DVD were made specifically with you in mind, to help you engage in sustained and meaningful dialogue, and to give you the tools you need to change people's hearts and minds, so that together we might build up a pro-life culture, one person, one conversation at a time. To get your copies of the book Persuasive Pro-Life or the DVD Making the Case for Life for just $5 each, just call 1-888-291-8000 or visit the shop at Catholic.com.
Do you subscribe to Catholic Answers Magazine? We hope, but if not, right now we've got a deal that you're going to love. We've reduced the price and thrown in a free digital subscription when you subscribe. That's right, subscriptions to Catholic Answers Magazine just got cheaper, $10 less on one-year subscriptions and $20 less on two-year subscriptions. And right now, when you purchase a subscription, you get a subscription to the digital edition added to your order for free. With a deal like that, it's the perfect gift for friends, family members, seminarians, your priest, even yourself. When you get right down to it, what other gift has the potential to touch hearts and reap eternal rewards? Log on today to CatholicAnswersMagazine.com and sign up yourself, your friends, and your family for a magazine that is bound to make a difference in their lives and the lives of those they meet. Share the faith. Defend the faith. Catholic Answers Magazine from Catholic Answers, the most trusted name in Catholic apologetics.
Call now with your question, 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host, joined by Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of the Archdiocese of San Diego. Of San Francisco. I beg your pardon. No, I belong to the Diocese of San Diego, and you were, in fact, ordained here, a priest of the Diocese of San Diego. You were a pastor for a while. Tell down right next to the Mexican border.
Yes.
Isn't that right?
Yes, in the town of Calexico. It's right on, literally 4 blocks from the border. The church is on 4th Street.
Yeah. It's nice down there. You like it over there in Calexico?
Oh, yeah, I loved it. I really felt like I was sort of coming into my own.
Yeah.
As the pastor there.
Man, it gets hot in the summertime down there, though.
The one thing I couldn't get used to was the heat.
What's worse, Roman summer or Calexico summer?
Good question. Good question. I would say as bad as Rome is probably Calexico.
Really?
Because there are days it gets up to 120 degrees in the shade.
Yeah,
So
but it's a dry heat. All right. 888-318-7884, our number, 888-318-7884. We are talking about beauty as a doorway to God, and the occasion of that is that the Archbishop has founded an institute called the Pope Benedict XVI Institute, and it started out very focused on liturgy, but it has broadened out to encompass beauty in a much wider way.
Yes.
So our society is full of all kinds of art, but it seems like the more art we have, the less beautiful the world gets these days. I mean, how do you judge whether something is beautiful or not?
I think people take that maxim about beauty is in the eye of the beholder too extreme. With kind of this age of relativism that we're living in,
yeah.
As if there are no objective standards of beauty. You can tell something is beautiful if it's universal.
Mm-hmm.
If it translates, people of different cultures, different parts of the world can recognize something as beauty. It has a certain consistency to the design. Would be one aspect. So there are certainly standards, and even though there are different styles, and even traditionally in the church, we have different styles of art and of architecture.
Yeah.
But there's this kind of the consistency of the design that captures a truth or captures an emotion through the medium is an objective standard of beauty.
There's a parish here in this diocese, St. Michael's downtown, and I notice every time I go there, it seems that the pastor must be very insistent upon this. Everything from the parking lot to the outer patio to it's beautiful, and it seems like they pay attention to the details of the beauty. And when I notice that when I go there, I feel like I'm in a certain sense leaving the world. I don't know how to put, but I that pastor, just the way he has that church really made me start to think it's really important that these churches be beautiful, and not just that a painting or something, but that there's a kind of refuge in beauty, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. Unfortunately, for a long time after the council, this sort of idea of functionalism set in.
Yeah.
And so church spaces were very kind of practically oriented, but devoid of beauty and devoid of a sense of the mystical or the transcendent. There's a famous story in San Francisco about after we have, it must be the first church built to be a cathedral after the council, because the previous cathedral had burned down in 1962, and then the archdiocese shortly after began a project of building a new cathedral, and but in accordance with the liturgical norms as they had come out. So it was dedicated in 1971, which has always struck me from when I first saw it in college as a modern style of architecture which captures a sense of beauty and transcendence.
Yeah.
But the famous story is, so it was dedicated in 1971, and towards right around that time, with everything that was going on in society, there was a lot of criticism of the archdiocese for all the money it was spending to build this cathedral, and couldn't this money be better spent to help the poor? A couple of years after it was dedicated, Dorothy Day was in San Francisco for a conference, and it was held at there's a conference center below the cathedral. It was being held there, and someone asked her a question that, don't you think it's kind of paradoxical that we're having this conference here in this big, expensive cathedral when we should be using our money to help the poor? And she said, well, the church does need to be helping the poor, and the church does do a lot to help the poor, and we need to keep that a priority. But there are very few places that poor people can go to that are beautiful. In this building, everyone has access to it, from the mayor of the city to the poorest person in the street.
Amen. Wow. Isn't that a wonderful answer? Yeah.
So beauty, you know,
Yeah.
it ennobles the human spirit.
Right.
It puts us in touch with the divine, and it's one of those things that makes life worth living.
But why do you? I get the sense sometimes that when people want beautiful liturgical music or beautiful liturgy, beautiful churches, that they're almost treated as reactionary by some people. Like, oh, well, you're so backwards, old-fashioned looking. Why can't you? You know, these are trivialities. The important thing, I guess, is, and then whatever the issue of the day, the important thing is that the soup kitchen, or that we're welcoming everybody. Or why do you think beauty is so treated as such a backwards thing sometimes?
Unfortunately, we got into these liturgy wars after the council of, you know.
Really, I hadn't noticed that.
Yeah, you're old enough to remember that.
Yeah.
I remember it well. But so everything was I think put in these categories of liberal, conservative, traditional, or Vatican II, and these false dichotomies. It would have helped if we really read those documents more seriously and pondered them more deeply, because we can see what those documents were saying was actually capitalizing on movements that were going on in the church for centuries, not only with liturgy, but very much liturgy, but the vocation of the lay people in the world is another example of how it was kind of seizing what was going on for these movements and then trying to catapult it to respond to what was going on in the world. So unfortunately, instead of that, this mentality, so again, what Pope Benedict calls the hermeneutic of rupture, of what was is now being replaced with something new, and people who liked what was come into conflict with those who like what is new. So there's still this lingering in the church. So someone who likes, say, chant rather than contemporary music is conservative and traditional and not Vatican II. But when people bring that up, use that vocabulary, I say, well, what does it mean to be a conservative Greek Orthodox? Or a liberal Greek Orthodox? You know, they favor doing a few less litanies during the liturgy. You know? It doesn't make any sense, and that's how it should be for us.
Right.
Now, well, it is, admittedly, our liturgy is much more diverse now. It's possible to have more different styles of music and to make adaptations and versus before. But nonetheless, we should understand this as trying to find ways to speak to the culture that we're in, rather than just trying to sort of mimic the culture that we're in, but find ways that we can communicate more effectively to it. But what gives me hope is that the young people didn't grow up with these liturgy wars. You know, Vatican II is ancient history for them. Right. So they're not beholden to this kind of post liberal, conservative kind of ideology. And so they can be more, I think, honestly intrigued by what the different traditions the church has in the whole world of liturgy, and can, I think, perhaps more authentically explore it and appropriate it.
A lot of calls, so how about we go to calls, Archbishop?
Sure.
Let's go to Brian in Easton, Maryland, listening on the Catholic Answers app. Brian, your question for Archbishop Cordileone.
Gentlemen, good evening. Thank you for having me.
Happy to.
I'm just so excited. I've followed you for a while. Do I call you Your Grace? Is that your title, sir?
Yeah, Your Grace is the British usage for an archbishop, so you may use that, yes.
Well, I just think I've read a lot about you. When I saw you on the app, I was so excited. But my question is, I'm a lay person, and I think the most beautiful thing in our faith is we're the only pro-life religion basically in the world, and that we're open to life, and no other religion is. And we have 7 kids, 3 of which are miscarriages, so we have 10 kids total. And it's very lonely, to be honest. And people look at you like you have 2 heads, even in the Catholic Church, for just basically trying to be faithful to the beautiful gift of kids. So I was wondering, what advice do you have for us families who are just trying to keep our heads down and be faithful? And I'm not trying to complain, but it does feel kind of lonely sometimes when you have a big family, even in the Catholic Church. And we have a great parish, but not a lot of big families.
Yes, I've heard this from other parents of large families. That's why I always make it a point to congratulate them on their beautiful family when I meet such families. I understand how it can feel lonely, but there are other people who share your conviction of the truth. and the beauty of the truth. So I think it's important to find people who understand that you can share faith with and share fellowship with, so you can strengthen each other in living the values that come from the faith and not feel so lonely. Maybe there are some family movements or communities where you're at where you could connect with a community of people that are dedicated to living the fullness of the church's truth.
Does that work for you, Brian?
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Seek out like-minded Catholics.
God bless you. That's another one. Yeah, that's old-fashioned Catholic, but it's not. Thanks so much for that call. We were discussing beauty as a door to God, and one that we can make better use of as Catholics. That's what the Benedict XVI Institute is about, founded by the Archbishop of San Francisco, who is here to discuss beauty and liturgy with us today. 888-31-TRUTH is the number. We'll be right back with your calls and Archbishop Cordileone right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live.
Whatever I have learned, writes Catholic Answers founder Karl Keating, I have learned from the masters of the craft. In his new book, Booked for Life, a bibliographic memoir of an accidental apologist, Karl gives future generations a roadmap of what it takes and what it means to become a Catholic apologist. In the way only Karl can, he recounts numerous real-life situations he has encountered in his long career that illustrate the apologetic lessons he's learned. Then, drawing on a lifetime of experience, Karl reveals the books that helped him learn to defend the Catholic faith. Order your copy of Booked for Life today by calling 1-888-291-8000, logging on to the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Do you subscribe to Catholic Answers magazine? We hope, but if not, right now we've got a deal that you're going to love. We've reduced the price and thrown in a free digital subscription when you subscribe. That's right, subscriptions to Catholic Answers magazine just got cheaper, $10 less on one-year subscriptions and $20 less on two-year subscriptions. And right now, when you purchase a subscription, you get a subscription to the digital edition added to your order for free. With a deal like that, it's the perfect gift for friends, family members, seminarians, your priest, even yourself. When you get right down to it, what other gift has the potential to touch hearts and reap eternal rewards? Log on today to CatholicAnswersMagazine.com and sign up yourself, your friends, and your family for a magazine that is bound to make a difference in their lives and the lives of those they meet. Share the faith. Defend the faith. Catholic Answers magazine from Catholic Answers, the most trusted name in Catholic apologetics.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
I said to the sisters one day, what do you think you're going to look like in heaven? Oh, some of them had absolutely magnificent ideas. I didn't think of one of them. And so I got desperate because then my turn came. I didn't know what to say. And so in desperation, I said, what do you think I'll wear in heaven? And they all said with one voice, armor!
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of the Archdiocese of San Francisco is with us today, and we're discussing beauty and the liturgy. 888-318-7884 is our number, 888-31-TRUTH. We go now to Bill in Portland, Oregon, listening on 88.3 FM Mater Dei Radio. Bill, you are on with Archbishop Cordileone. Your question, please.
Well, thank you. Actually, I have two questions. One is I appreciate him making the comments on that it really wasn't Vatican II. So my question is, the first question would be, I always look at what happened to the Mass especially was more of a pre-60s versus post-60s thing, just because of just how the culture changed, and that even without the council, that all those, all the unreverence crept in. And then the second thing is that I was wondering what the Archbishop thinks that I think a lot of the decay in society happened that when we got rid of that beauty and reverence, in the church building, the church liturgy, the church art, the church music, and that it got casual. It kind of gave made us have a casual view about life, a casual view about marriage, a casual view about love, and we just really lost that reverence.
I couldn't agree with you more.
So those are my two questions.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. Everything is interrelated, and our worship is at the heart of who we are. You know, God created us to worship Him, and we are happy when we worship God rightly. And when we worship God rightly, then everything else will be rightly ordered. But if we're not properly ordered in our worship of God, and we're focused more in on worshiping ourselves, everything else is going to be disordered. And you mentioned that about what goes on in the culture of care for the poor, of marriage and family life, and all kinds of institutions, education, and so forth. So it really is important that the liturgy be properly celebrated and our worship be rightly ordered. And that is the very point of beauty in the liturgy. Beauty is one of those attributes of God, and liturgy is supposed to bring us into contact with the divine. And it is one of the ways we participate in the divine. If God made the human race in His image and likeness, nothing else that God created is in His image and likeness, only the man and the woman. Well, God is the creator, and that means we have a certain capacity to create that sets us apart from all the rest of creation, all the animals. So it's our capacity to create beauty, and when we create beauty that's worthy of the worship of the one true God, then we create within ourselves a capacity for the happiness that God wants us to have with Him.
Okay, Bill?
Does that help?
Yes, and I also want to, and thank the Archbishop. I'm actually a teacher, and when he came into the San Francisco a few years ago, asking the teachers to kind of toe the line, so to speak, and teach, to teach the beauties of our Catholic faith. And I also got to see him at the one of the walks for life, West Coast Walk for Life a couple of years ago. So appreciated his presence in both those instances. So
thank you, Bill.
Thank you, and God bless all you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill. 888-318-7884, the number. We go now to Sarah in Houston, Texas, listening on KSHJ. Sarah, you are on with Archbishop Cordileone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Archbishop, thank you so much for your comments. I'm just drinking them in. The reason I called is this. I am one of several people who's working very hard in the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston, to build an organization for Catholic writers and artists to build up knowledge about their output, to reinforce them in the lonely journey of being a Catholic writer. I am a writer myself. Anyway, so that's the background, and this is my question for you. What spiritual advice would you like to give us to help us as we go on this journey with each other?
I'm so glad you asked this question, because you reminded me of another point about the Benedict XVI Institute. We have on the website an online magazine called Catholic Arts Today, which is precisely to highlight Catholic artists and what Catholics are doing in the area of all of the arts. And to kind of feature them, as well as feature Catholic art, but also featuring Catholic artists. So one thing I would suggest is, go on the website. Well, that's for everyone, benedictinstitute.org, and you can connect with the Catholic Arts Today online magazine. And it'd be great if we could maybe stay in touch, because we're precisely trying to create a space where Catholic artists can be fully Catholic and utilize their talents in a way that gives glory to God, and to be precisely a support for Catholic artists. So maybe through the website, if we can be in touch about that. I think you're on the right track in putting together a group of, similar to what I said earlier about being together with like-minded Catholics. So I'd imagine that's also kind of a lonely world, being a faithful Catholic in the world that a lot of artists have to live in. So, but to be together like a spiritual support group, we have a lot of professional support groups that share faith and grow in their faith. Legatus for CEOs. We have for the medical profession. We have for the legal profession. So we really should have something as well for artists. So I totally commend you for what you're doing in trying to get a group together. Maybe you could find a wise priest to serve as a chaplain for you, to give you some spiritual guidance and to sort of learn from what some of these other professional groups are doing. So those are two things I would say. One is to develop what you have begun doing with the blessing of your archbishop and with a priest who can guide you. And then maybe if you can contact us through our website, we could maybe work together on that as well.
Okay, Sarah?
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sarah. 888-318-7884, the number. Archbishop Cordileone from the Archdiocese of San Diego. I'm going to keep doing that. I'm sorry. San Francisco.
You keep wanting to promote this southern diocese, huh?
Yeah, I know. We're promoting San Diego to Archdiocese. Yeah, no, we're not. Dave in Tacoma, Washington. Get me out of this trouble, Dave. Listening on Sacred Heart Radio, your question for Archbishop Cordileone.
Yes, I was just wondering, I heard about it, I was wondering what the purpose of the Pope Benedict Institute is, and I was wondering if it helps people's prayer life, and I think people are doing pretty good, and I was also wondering if the saints in heaven hear our prayers, and I listened to the answer, and I like your show. Thank you.
Okay. So the purpose of the Benedict XVI Institute is to be a resource for parishes and for people who want to enrich the life of liturgy. So that certainly will help people in their prayer life if our liturgies are more, say, beautifully celebrated. That's going to help people grow spiritually. Using art as a source for prayer is also something that is of ancient origin, praying before icons, praying before other types of sacred art, or meditating on a piece of sacred music. So art itself can be a means to move one to a deeper prayer. So the beauty kind of naturally inspires the soul and lifts the soul closer to God, even natural beauty. And when we see a beautiful sunset, for example, it moves us and we appreciate the beauty of God. So certainly beauty in these ways can help one in one's prayer life and to grow spiritually.
Oh, well, he's not there anymore, so I was going to go back to him. At 888-318-7884, our number. Let's see if I can find a line. William in Little Rock, Arkansas, listening on the EWTN app. You are on with Archbishop Cordileone from San Francisco. Your question, please.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for your work. I wanted to make sure that you all emphasized the website for what you've started, because it's rich and it can be accessed by any Catholic in the world, and it's inspiring and informative. It just makes me wish that we had one in Little Rock, or at least a branch of it, because of the children and teen chant camps and Father Weber, who could come out and teach us to be more worshipful. It's just a wonderful effort and a very thoughtful one, and really no questions except just a heartfelt thank you.
You're welcome. I can give you a couple of thoughts, though, on what you've said. Well, first of all, Father Samuel Weber has produced some wonderful resources for parishes and individuals to sing simple chant settings to English text. He's worked on, and now it's published by Ignatius Press, the Pew Missal. It has the readings and for the masses throughout the year, along with the entrance chant and communion chant put to in English, put to simple chant, as well as the responsorial psalm. And then in the back there's an index of hymns. So that's a resource for parishes. Very easy to get people singing. Is one example of the sort of resources he's produced. He also does a lot of work for us in the Archdiocese in leading sung Vespers, and sometimes at Mass too. He has a remarkable ability to teach people to sing. They chant the whole office of Vespers with about a minute and a half rehearsal ahead of time. And so he proves that chant is simple to sing and people can take to it readily, and people do sing it very well. Be in touch with the Institute through the website, benedictinstitute.org. I'm happy you know about the chant camps that we will be doing and have been going on here in San Diego for quite some years. And we're bringing them up to San Francisco. These are, it's a week of teaching chant to children and teens. They can cover different levels of ability. They've been proven to be very effective. Children love it. They take to it like a duck to water. But what William might be interested in knowing is that we're also going to develop what we're calling Chant Camp in a Box. So we're also going to have a week where we will work with parish music directors to teach them how to teach a chant camp. So this is one thing you can do even at a distance away, as you are in Little Rock. If you could have someone could attend what we'll be offering for this chant camp in a box and bring it back to your diocese, and that person can be in turn a resource for other music directors in the parishes there.
William, thanks very much for that call. Archbishop, I think you have the right moment for this. It's something so kind of vulgar about our culture in so many instances. I really do think there's a tremendous hunger for something beautiful.
I agree with you. The vulgarity is just is precisely the word that I've noticed, and I think it does create with people a longing. Maybe even they're not even aware of it, but it's somewhere deep in them. They're longing for something that is truly beautiful and ennobling.
We'll be right back with more on Catholic Answers Live. If you have a question about beauty, about the liturgy, about liturgical music that you'd like to share with Archbishop Cordileone, give us a call, 888-318-7884. Right back with more after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Your questions, Catholic Answers Live.
Hi, this is Trent Horn, and I'm here with a couple of very special offers for all of you interested in standing up for the rights of the unborn. January is Pro-Life Month, and to get as many people as we can involved in the pro-life cause, we're making my book, Persuasive Pro-Life, and my DVD, Making the Case for Life, available for just $5 each. That's a saving of over 70%. I wrote this book and I made this DVD specifically with you in mind, to help you engage in sustained and meaningful dialogue and give you the tools you need to change people's hearts and minds, so that together we might build up a pro-life culture, one person, one conversation at a time. To get your copies of my book, Persuasive Pro-Life, or my DVD, Making the Case for Life, for just $5, call 1-888-291-8000 or visit the shop at Catholic.com.
Homeschool Connections, an online provider of courses for your Catholic homeschool, is a sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. Homeschool Connections website is homeschoolconnections.com.
Pope Francis said, "All of us are called to mature in our work as evangelizers. We want to have better training, a deepening love, and a clearer witness to the gospel. St. Paul Street Evangelization's online school of evangelization will equip you with the tools you need to be an effective evangelist. We'll ask for a pledge of financial support, but if you're unable to give, we'll set you up for free. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Just like the saints of the Counter-Reformation, our own souls are in constant need of reform, of reconversion to God and His will for us. We struggle with sin. We become distracted in prayer. We find it hard to be loving and easy to be selfish. In Reform Yourself, Sean McAfee shows you how these magnificent saints can be guides to your own personal transformation. We all need to reform our souls. Let the saints who reformed the church show you how. Order your copy of Reform Yourself today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Call now with your question, 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to our Super Big Monday show here on Catholic Answers Live. And when I say super big, I mean super big. We have Archbishop Cordileone from the Archdiocese of San Francisco here, helping us through discussion of beauty, particularly beauty in the liturgy, beauty in music, beauty in art. And that is being promoted by a new institute that he founded, the Benedict XVI Institute. Our number, 888-318-7884. Archbishop, I want to just say something to you just to try to help everybody out. Did you know that there's a wave of anxiety that goes before you as an archbishop because everybody says, what am I supposed to say? Eminence? Am I supposed to say, what's the other? Excellency? Am I supposed to say, how do you prefer to be called? Like, what's your preferred?
Your Excellency or Your Grace is kind of old-fashioned manners. Archbishop is respectful, kind of more contemporary. Whatever people feel comfortable with is fine with me.
Okay.
But not eminence.
Because that
eminence is for cardinals.
Yeah. Well, that's aspirational. Which Chris Check says
that would be a fault to have that aspiration for any priest.
Yeah. But you know what? While we're on the topic, how would you vote? No, I'm just kidding. 888-318-7884, our number. Let's go to Michelle in Lincoln, Nebraska, listening on Spirit Catholic Radio 102.7. Michelle, your question for Archbishop Cordileone.
Thank you for taking my call and for all the work that you do, Your Excellency. My question is, I'm a musician at our church, and it seems to me like beauty in music is kind of dependent on who you are and what your perception of beauty is. And I've, read a lot of critiques about some of the more contemporary music that is used versus some of the quote-unquote more traditional music that's used. But, I look at many songs across the board, and I can see beauty in the lyrics and in the, notes that are played and everything. And so I guess I just kind of struggle with, who decides what's beautiful music and what's not, and why is there such a kind of a harsh critique of some of the more, I guess I consider modern music that's used in some churches?
I would think, thinking off the top of my head, that those who react kind of strongly against it, it's because the contemporary music that's used is very often bad music and bad lyrics. But there is, good quality contemporary music available, and a lot of contemporary music uses scriptural text, so you can't go wrong with those words either. But both are important, the quality of the music and then the text itself. I've noticed many of the more recent contemporary songs, the words really focus on the community, and they're sort of celebrating the people gathered rather than being more focused on God. So we have to be careful when we choose the music for the liturgy. But what your question calls to mind, what Pope Pius X taught with his apostolic letter that really began the liturgical renewal movement at the magisterial level with Trae Sollicitudini. When he spoke about what is worthy for liturgical music, he said it has to have three qualities, which is holiness, beauty, and universality. So beauty is one of those three elements. So again, I mentioned earlier about something beautiful is something that has a universal appeal, and it has a certain holiness to it. It elevates our soul. So you're right. There's also truth in there's beauty is a matter of taste. There are principles, but there's also room for different types of beauty and different styles, and we have a wider variety of styles of music we can use at Mass. So I think there's people have had probably very bad experiences with music at Mass, and so that leads them to reject any kind of use of contemporary style of music. I think we have to, when we use other styles of music, though, we have to do it in a way that makes it sacred rather than just imitates the way it sounds in the world in a secular way. Ultimately, I suppose the priest who's celebrating the Mass would have to decide what music is appropriate for the Mass, or the pastor of a parish for his parish, a bishop for his diocese, and so forth. But I think it's helpful to educate people to be able to appreciate what is truly beautiful, and to understand the meaning of music, musically and thematically as well.
Michelle?
Yeah, that is very helpful, and I guess it leads me to, I agree that there is some music out there that is not beautiful and not appropriate, even though it's in the music books. I guess it does lead me, to worry a little bit about maybe some of the music I'm picking out for church is not beautiful. And so is there some good source or a good list out there somewhere about here's some good songs and here are songs we should not sing?
There's no explicit list that I know of. Some dioceses have lists of songs that are approved or perhaps disapproved. I think that would be up to the parish music director to be able to appreciate that and decide what to use and what not to use. I like to say one good guiding principle in using contemporary music, well, any kind of hymn for that matter, is the hymns and songs are really not integral to the Mass. In the Church's liturgical tradition, hymns are used for the divine office. Each hour has a hymn. The Mass has these antiphons, the entrance chant or introit, and then the communion chant, which are scriptural texts. That's what's integral to the Mass, and it's supposed to be sung or recited if there's no music at that point. The fourth of the four options that the general instruction gives is to substitute a hymn or a song at that point, but that's what we do, 99.9% of the time. So if that's the case, one can always look for a song, if they're doing, especially if they're doing contemporary music, look for a song that is based on that scriptural text and use that for that particular Mass. So that this is an example of how to integrate the music that's sung within the Mass itself. And then, of course, a parish music director would have the knowledge to discern what is good quality music and what is bad. So again, the decision based on the music, quality of the music, and the text.
Thanks, Michelle, very much. You talked about being prepared for beauty, and I think that may be one of the things that's difficult for pastors is even if they want a very elevated kind of beauty, we are often not prepared to know what's beautiful or to appreciate the beautiful in today's world.
That is true. That is true. We need to educate people to appreciate beauty.
Let's go to England. Giuseppe, watching on YouTube Live. Thanks for watching on YouTube Live. Giuseppe, you are on with Archbishop Cordileone. Your question, please.
Good evening, Your Excellency.
Good evening.
An absolute honour to speak to you. I would like to ask you, would you think that adding more Latin within the music, within the liturgy, would be a most beautiful thing?
In the sense of sung Latin, or just the Latin text?
Sung Latin.
Yes.
And, but sung Latin. I come from an Italian background, and I am actually sort of learning to speak Latin as well as a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of introducing more Latin within the liturgy, I personally think would be a very beautiful thing, more traditional thing. Would you not agree with that?
Latin is certainly a very beautiful language, and the soul of our church is really Latin. Well, initially it was Greek, but after a few centuries, Latin became the language, and the whole liturgy really has developed with the Latin language. The musically, then, all of the traditional music, obviously before the council, was in Latin, although people were beginning to sing hymns in the vernacular that Pope Pius XII allowed for that. So I think the singing of the Latin would enhance the beauty if it's sung well. I have heard sacred music in Latin sung poorly, and it's really bad when that happens. It doesn't help at all. Traditional music can also be done poorly, but if it's done well, it will be beautiful. Because the music is beautiful and the words are uplifting. So I think it does add beauty, but we can also, that might be too big of a jump for people. We can sing chant in the vernacular setting. I had mentioned about Father Samuel Weber has those resources. So I think Latin also has the advantage of uniting people from different language backgrounds. They can pray the Mass together when they can sing those standard parts of the Mass in Latin.
Giuseppe, thank you so much for that call from England. We do appreciate it. Archbishop Cordileone, thank you for a great hour.
Thank you for having me.
May we have your blessing before we go.
May the blessing of Almighty God come upon you and remain with you forever, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit.
Amen. And again, let's give out that website. The institute is called the Pope Benedict XVI Institute.
Benedict XVI Institute for Sacred Music and Divine Worship, and benedictinstitute.org.
Again, thank you very much, Archbishop. A real honor and pleasure to have you here. Tomorrow, 2 hours of open forum. If you have any question on the life, the faith, the history of the Catholic Church, we'll do our very best to answer it. See you then, God willing, on Catholic Answers Live.